Good evening, everybody. We'll get things started here. Thank you for joining us for another one of these virtual conversations. We so enjoy doing these. I'm Karen Hansen, the Marketing and Communication Manager here at Can Do Canines, and I'll be presenting questions during our time tonight. If you do have a question you'd like to submit, you can do so by clicking the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen and typing in your question to send. We'll get to as many of those as we can before 8 o'clock. If you would like to use the closed captioning feature, that is available below. Just click on the live transcript icon and select Show Subtitle. We are also recording this, so it will be available on YouTube, hopefully on Monday. I also want to acknowledge Chiquia, who is here as our sign language interpreter for this session. So thank you, Chiquia. Jeff Johnson, our Executive Director, and Julianne Larson, our Director of Training, are here this evening to discuss plans for our expansion project for our New Hope campus. It's super exciting. I think you're going to enjoy what you hear tonight. So at this point, I am going to go behind the scenes and turn this over to Jeff.
Great. Thank you, Karen. Thanks, Shakia, for interpreting for us. And thank you to everybody who is here tonight just to kind of get an update on what's going on. Hopefully we can answer some of your questions tonight as well. I'm going to actually let Julianne start. She can introduce herself for those who don't know her, and she can maybe give you a quick update on our Whelping and Growth Center, which is our new facility, or new as of about a year ago, out in New Germany, about 45 minutes west of here. And if she has anything else she wants to share. And then once she's done, she'll turn it back over to me, and I will give you a little background on what that building plan looks like and show you a picture. So Julianne, why don't you take it?
Thank you, Jeff. First of all, thank you everyone for being here with us this evening. We're excited to share kind of the upcoming plans with all of you. Also want to warn you, a tail end of a cold, so hopefully my voice won't be too raspy for this evening. So I want to say we have just completed our first full year at our Whelping and Growth, or WAG Center. It has been an amazing experience for everyone, staff and volunteers. The dogs seem to be doing great when they come out to whelp their litters. We have whelped a total of 13 litters in this past year at our new WAG Center that has produced a total of 77 puppies. I have to say we have the most amazing group of staff and volunteers out there. They are dedicated to these dogs and put their heart and soul into the care of the mamas and the babies. They also get a lot of cuddle time, so that's great too for them. I'd say some of the biggest benefits of whelping in-house, as we say, is that we have this amazing group of people to share the load, right? So a litter of puppies produces a lot of work. And for any of you out there listening that were whelping home volunteers, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The amount of work that goes into caring for a litter of puppies is incredible. So being able to share that workload with a group of like-minded individuals that are all dedicated to the cause has been super. We had the opportunity to experience a couple of moms come back for a second time to whelp their litters. So they've had two litters in the last year. And watching those mama dogs come in to the facility for the second time, they know where they are, they know the people, they're happy to see everyone, and it's just such a wonderful, relaxing environment for all. I can't thank everyone enough, both the donors that have helped make this happen so far, and the volunteers that come out and help. They have made this the success it is. They have also been wonderful at kind of adjusting as we go. This was a new thing for us. So, we tried some things that maybe didn't work as well as we thought they would, and everyone was great about adjusting when we needed to. There's so many positives. It would take up the whole evening to list them all about what we're seeing out there, but I do, again, want to just say thank you to everyone involved that made this happen. In particular, I really want to thank Karen Balgard for her dedication to making this the success it's been, and putting her heart and soul into all that she does. So thank you very much. And with that, I will hand it back to Jeff.
Great. Thank you, Julianne. Thanks for the update. And we believed it would go well, but it has gone better than I think anybody could have hoped it was. So thank you to everybody who has been supportive and helped make that work. So I'm going to show you in just a few minutes. Hopefully we're going to try to show you on the screen a picture, a blueprint of how we intend to build out our facility here in New Hope. But before I show that to you, I kind of want to give you a little background of how we got there and why we're even talking about more than doubling the size of our campus here in New Hope. And it really started when I started just under 4 years ago. I replaced our founder who'd been here for 30 years, Al Peters. And before I was hired, the board had started talking about a strategic plan. And then when Al announced he was retiring, they put it off so that the new executive director could be part of that, which I'm thankful for. And we spent my entire first year putting together a 3-year strategic plan that we passed almost 3 years ago. And it has guided everything we've done as an organization. This has not been a strategic plan that sits on the shelf. Every year we base our departmental work plans on the 3 goals in the strategic plan, and then everybody's individual goals as an employee are based on the work plans. And after a year of discussing the strategic plan, we came up with a plan that had 3 broad goals, which really drive us as an organization. The first one was, kind of to put it simply, do better what we already do. So it was better support, better engage our clients, our volunteers, our staff, and other supporters. And a lot of really good things came from that, and a lot of really good things still need to come from that. That is a work in progress. Goal number 2 was to raise our profile and reach new communities, in particular, more diverse communities than what we've been able to reach in the past. And we've seen some tremendous success in that goal and have a long ways to go there as well. And then our third goal was to serve more people. And several things came of that. 2 of the bigger things were our facility dog program and our skilled home companion program, which are new ways that we are serving people. One thing we did not do in that year-long conversation, we knew that everybody wanted to serve more people eventually, that we wanted to grow as an organization and change more lives. But we decided that we wouldn't put that into this strategic plan. We wouldn't pick a number, so to speak, because that would distract from all of these things that need to happen before we can responsibly grow. And we knew that a lot of things had to happen before we could do that. So we set that aside, and those were our 3 goals. The year after that, then, we spent an entire year with a new group of people, which included the board, staff, volunteers, clients, to talk about, okay, what does that bottom line growth look like in the long term? We have been certifying 40 to 50 teams every year for the past decade, and it's moved up and down just depending upon lots of different things. But that's about where we've been. And after a year of very methodical discussion and a lot of research and thoughtful conversations, the board agreed unanimously to set a goal of 70 teams a year from that 40 to 50 that we've been doing in 10 years, which is now 9 years from now. And that goal is something that cannot happen responsibly unless several other things happen first before we actually see that movement. One thing is we need to continue to recruit more volunteers and retain our volunteers, and that's something that's been happening but needs to continue happening. We need to hire more staff or continue to hire more staff, and we need to raise more money in order to pay that staff. And then finally, we need to expand our facility, and what we're looking at is more than doubling the size of the facility. And that's what I want to talk about for the next few minutes. And I don't talk about expanding the facility because it's the most important of those 4 things that have to happen. It's not. This can't happen in a responsible, reasonable way unless all 4 of those things happen. But it's the most high profile and frankly the most expensive of the things that we're going to be doing. So what I want to do is put up the latest version of the drawings for this. And I'm going to try that right now and hope that it works. All right. I assume you can all see that. So this is the most current drawing. It will change some in the coming months before we finalize anything, but I think in general, this is what the expansion is going to look like. So to get some context, hopefully you can see my cursor moving around. This is our current building right here. And these are our current kennels up here. So this is the east wall of our current building. You would, if you're a volunteer, you would come to this door in the back. Otherwise, you'd park in our parking lot, which is here. You walk down our long sidewalk and you come in. Here's the front door, just to get you oriented. This is all office space. Here's the big room. So when you see the dark gray areas, those are areas inside our current building that will be repurposed for something different. And the light gray areas are an expansion of the building. So as you can see, we're more than doubling the size of the building. This office area will all stay largely the same, except for up here. This is now office space. That will become another training room. We are short on training space. This is our current training room 1, and that is going to become, it's going to be configured differently than this, but that's going to become some office space. And it's no longer new apartments here. This is also going to be an employee space so that we have a larger kitchen and lounge for people to get together in. Here is where our current client apartment is. We're actually going to add 2 more client apartments, so we will have 3 of them, and 2 of them will be connected in case 2 unrelated people, maybe a caregiver and someone else, come together. They could have adjoining rooms, but not have to try to share a room. And then here will be new training space. Ideally, we will have a removable wall, so we could have 1 large room or 2 smaller rooms, and this here and all this in here will be new office space. Currently, our building stops here, and this is where we have our potty yard for staff dogs. That will now all be building. So this is a new building. This will be our new volunteer center. So you will, rather than coming to the back door or the side door here and sit outside and wait in the snow or rain because there's nowhere for you to go, you'll come up the frontage road of 169, and there will be a parking lot here. There will also be a garage for transport vans to drive into. And then we will have a spot for volunteers to come inside and wait. It probably won't be staffed because we can't afford another person just to be there, but we will figure out a way to allow people to come in and wait, and there will be a restroom in there and a waiting room. We'll also have our vet area here rather than now it's kind of in the warehouse area. And then this new space up here will be our new early learning center. And we have talked to a lot of other ADI organizations. Some of them have done what they have called early learning centers. We think this is unique, at least in some ways, to what anyone has tried before within ADI. So we will be able to report to other ADI organizations how well this works, and maybe if somebody does it down the road, how we could or could have done it better. The bottom line is puppies from about 10 weeks to 16 to 20 weeks. That is our biggest, now that we're whelping in-house, that's our biggest volunteer ask. And you might guess why. They're puppies that don't sleep through the night. They aren't potty trained yet. And, if you have a full-time job, it's almost impossible to do. Our goal going forward will be to continue to place as many of those puppies in full-time homes as possible as we're doing it now, but we simply don't have enough volunteers to do that, even with our current numbers, let alone if we want to grow. So this will allow people who can't take the dogs 24/7 to be able to drop them off at our early learning center, our daycare center, essentially, for puppies. So maybe they work every day. They could drop the puppy off. We will have staff and volunteers there that will spend time with the puppies, and then they pick them up at the end of the day. Maybe they only need to do that 1 day a week or 2 days a week, but this will add significant flexibility and certainly would be better for a new puppy than being left at home for large periods of time alone. This is our current play yard, and these are our current kennels. We're going to extend the kennel up here. You will see this says future kennels, that there's no plan for that, but it's just suggesting that if in 15 or 20 years more addition needs to happen, then they would do it right here. So we will be adding enough kennels to get us probably 15 to 20 years down the road. There'll be a new dog kitchen here. And as I mentioned, these are all new offices in this space. This will be the new front entrance. So you'll park here or over here and come in the front entrance, new reception area. There'll be a new meeting room here that can be for like board meetings, but also it'll be probably large enough to hold 40 to 50 people in a theater type setting. So sometimes we'll have 30, 40 people in the big room, which is too large for that. This will be perfect for that. Um, more warehouse space here. We're going to about double our warehouse space, which we desperately need. And then here will be the new whelping center, which we're going to call the birthing and enrichment center, the Bay Center. So we will, once this is complete and in operation, we will sell the WAG Center out in New Germany and credit that money to hopefully pay for what is left of this addition. We're gaining, I think, 34 parking spots, which we also desperately need when we have events, so that will be helpful. We will still have most of the wooded area up here. So I am going to stop sharing. So that's the basics of it. And I'm sorry I ran through that kind of quick. If you were on your phone, it didn't probably show up well, but hopefully it gives people a feeling for what we're looking at. Again, this will change some. We're going to meet with every staff member in small groups as we've already done once before. Now, again, to walk through it and make sure from a workflow standpoint, it's efficient and it still works. Make sure we're not missing anything. And there'll be more discussion with volunteers and the board about this before they maybe make any final plans, probably quite a ways into next year. So, Karen, I think with that, that's what I've got.
Great. I'm sure for all of you out there, like so many of us staff members, you want this to happen starting tomorrow and be done in about a week. But we will practice our patience, just like our dogs do right before mealtime, when that bowl is being set down, and know that it's coming. But one question that came in ahead of time, Jeff, will send to you is, will the dogs stay in the kennel during the construction?
Hopefully, that is the goal. Now, we haven't even started the process of choosing a construction company yet to do this, or a general contractor. So that will be part of the discussion, obviously, with whoever is making the plans for this. But ideally, they would be able to, which means that we'd probably do this in maybe 2 phases. We don't really want to do it in 3 or 4. But if we can do it that way and not put the dogs at risk of, dust or extra smoke or extremely loud noises for long periods of time, then that's what we would greatly prefer to do. The reality is, regardless of how we do it, it's going to be an unpleasant few months for staff, and we just have to accept that and realize that at the end of it all, it's going to be well worth it. But hopefully we can do this in a way that keeps at least some of the dogs in the kennel.
Great. Julianne, since you popped back up, I'm going to pivot a little bit and go to you with a couple of questions that came in ahead of time. And then I think we'll get back to more questions for Jeff, specifically regarding the construction and campaign. But Julianne, someone was wondering if we have mobility assistance dogs available for veterans. Maybe you can speak to that a little.
Sure. Well, we do not have a dedicated veteran program. We absolutely welcome applications from all of our vets out there that qualify for one of our existing programs. So mobility being one of those. Please do apply.
Okay. And another question for you is, you currently allow service dogs for children with autism. Could this be expanded for hearing dogs for children who are deaf? We could do the tripod support and training system that is utilized for a child with autism. And maybe, Julianne, you want to start by explaining that tripod that they referred to and go from there.
Sure. So our autism placements are kind of a group effort, right? So the child is one piece of the team, the dog another, and then the adult caregiver or parent would be the third piece of that puzzle. In those instances, the adult handles the dog. Our autism assist dogs are trained to wear a pack cape and a tether that attaches them to the child. So for children who have elopement behaviors or try to bolt or run, the dog is trained to stay in place and stop them from bolting until the parent or caregiver can get them back kind of in place. So with that, I'm assuming this question is kind of referring to having the three pieces of that puzzle with a deaf or hard of hearing child. At this time, we are not planning on expanding our programs. We do offer 6 different programs currently. Placing, even though it is a hearing dog that you're talking about with a child, it is still very different. Training and the process would be very different. So at this point, we are not considering expanding our programming. I'm not saying that it's something we'd never do in the future, but for right now, that's not a direction we're planning.
All right. And Julianne and Jeff, I think I'm going to ask you to stay on screen because we're hearing that Shakia looks frozen when there's not at least 3 people visible for some reason. So gonna keep you on the hot seat. All right, Jeff, back to you. Someone asked, do you plan to keep the nature path through the tall trees intact, or will it be cut down for the expansion?
No, we will, so that wooded area on the north part of our property, we will extend just a little bit into that, and we have some wetland issues that we'll have to remediate for. But by and large, the vast majority of that wooded area will stay. Certainly the whole path will stay, and we're going to improve that path and make it a little more permanent and hopefully actually extend the walking path on our property as part of the capital campaign. So that will stay.
Okay. Let's get into a little more of the meat about the project, Jeff. When will you expect the capital campaign to start, and how much money do you believe you will be asking for and raising?
So the capital campaign will start what we refer to as the quiet phase, or maybe the silent phase, soon, like probably in the next few weeks, certainly before the end of the year. And that quiet phase is a few of us here talking to a handful of people who could be lead gifts or anchor gifts in the $1 million range or something in there. And then once we raise a certain percent, probably around half or maybe even a little more than that, that's when we would open that up to what would be a more public phase for every possible range, because we're going to need every possible range of gifts to get this done. Right now, we're looking at about a $10 million campaign. So it's not a small lift, but we have found that people are very generous, and we have a really unique story to tell compared to almost any other organization around. So it's not going to be easy, but I think we'll get there.
Okay. And speaking of timing, when do you expect to break ground? And well, you may have kind of covered this with your previous answer, but will it start before all that money is raised?
Yes, so breaking ground, it really depends upon the early success of the campaign, but right now we are thinking it is maybe a 1.5 to 2 year campaign at the most. So if all goes well, we could break ground in 2026, probably later in 2026, and have the project complete in 2027 and move in 2027. That would be the ideal situation. And frankly, the sooner we can do it, the better, because every year you wait, and even though inflation is lower right now, it does add to the cost of it. So once we get started, we're gonna move as quickly as we can. We will almost certainly break ground before we've raised all of the money. We haven't decided as an organization yet. In the end, that will be a board decision as to at what point are we comfortable saying, okay, we have enough and we know we're going to raise the full amount to go ahead and get started. If we waited until we had raised all of it, it will probably be much longer than that, and we will again add that extra cost of inflation on every year. So we'll have to take out a mortgage at some point for a short period of time to get the thing started, and then hopefully pay that off pretty quickly as we wrap up the capital campaign.
Julianne, could you answer at what point in life is specialization chosen for the dogs, and how is that decision made?
Typically, when dogs come in for final training, that's when they are assigned to a program trainer. And it's that trainer that starts working with the dog, getting a sense of what the dog's strengths are, what the dog likes to do. And that's usually when a decision is made as far as which direction or which program that dog fits best in. Occasionally, our puppy program staff who work closely with the volunteers and the dogs have a sense too, so we all communicate and we all talk about the dogs. And so they may share that, this dog's great with children, or this dog seems really in tune and likes to use its nose. So maybe a diabetes assist is a good fit. So it's a bit of a team effort, but primarily it kind of falls on the program trainers once the dogs are in for final training.
Thank you. Jeff, with the expansion, how many staff and what roles will need to be hired? And how much will salaries, et cetera, need to be added to the annual budget?
So I can't give you a number right off the top of my head, but we do have our 10, we've got a 10-year growth plan, which I think I mentioned when I was talking at the beginning, to grow to 70 teams. And over that 10 years, we have factored in what we will need to add for staff. In all honesty, we had set out a plan to add staff a couple years ago over the next 3 to 4 years at that time. But as Mike Tyson once said about planning a fight, everybody's got a plan until you get punched in the mouth. And turnover, we got punched in the mouth because there's always lots of reasons for turnover, but I would say the main reason for turnover here was workload and burnout and stress for not feeling like employees could keep up or certainly ever get ahead and do some of the bigger things we wanted to do. So we actually sped up that growth, the staffing goals that we had, and have hired in the past few months people that weren't in the budget. We have the largest client services staff we've ever had now. We have the largest puppy program staff we've had now, with one starting in January. I believe we have the largest full-time kennel staff that we've ever had, and we also added a program trainer that was part of the budget. So we're actually a ways there ahead of time, and hopefully over the next couple years, as we get ready for that growth goal to start kicking in, we will be fully staffed, and then we'll have to grow from there. I think the estimate, if I remember, on an annualized basis of what we will need to be spending 9 years from now when we hit that goal versus right now, it's probably an extra, I believe it was an extra $500,000 a year in staff costs without factoring in inflation. So it'll be a bit more than that.
On the subject of staffing, someone says they've noticed there has been quite a turnover in the client services department. Are you concerned about this, and what are you doing to address it?
So I mentioned a little bit about this already, but of course, I mean, any leader is concerned about turnover, and I would rather have no turnover. And as I look at our turnover in the 4 years I've been here, it's been higher than I'd like. It has actually been roughly comparable to what the average nonprofit turnover is post-COVID. This is just a tough time when it comes to organizations of our kind. But however, in the past year, it has seemed higher, or probably more accurately, between last summer and this summer. The last few months, we've seen little or no turnover. But in that 1 year period, I think it was even more apparent because several people in one department, client services, left. And they also happens to be the most public facing of our departments. And I do want to say our clients have given us great grace during this period, because it's just a hard time when you have turnover in a department like that, and they've been wonderful. We're thankful for that. I think we all have to remember there are a lot of reasons that people leave an organization. Some of them are good reasons, like retirement or a cool new opportunity or spending more time with their family. And then some people leave for negative reasons, whatever they be. And as I think I already mentioned, certainly the biggest negative reason we've seen as an organization in my time here was just the staffing issue, the workload issue. And I think we've addressed that in the short term. That doesn't mean um, we don't need to continue to address that as we move forward. Now, as I mentioned, that we took what really was a 3 or 4 year goal of staffing up and pushed it all to now. That's great, but it also has budget consequences, and that's something that we are grappling with. We'll need a very strong year end in order to balance the budget, and we'll need a very strong next year in order to balance the budget. But we'll get there because we know how generous people are. We know how unique and wonderful our story is. And I guess I'd like to add too, from a staffing standpoint, I think anybody here would tell you, you never want to lose good people, and we've lost some good people over the last few years. But we really have an amazing staff right now. It's a group of very talented, hardworking people with this huge heart for our mission, who are going to serve us as an organization and our clients and our volunteers really well, and for several years to come, I hope.
All right. Moving back to Julianne. Someone asked, are you usually able to find placement for dogs as soon as they are ready to work?
That's kind of a tough question because every dog is unique and every situation is individual. In an ideal world, as soon as the dog is ready, I'd love it if we had a client ready to go and they start team training and move on into their new career. Unfortunately, it doesn't always work that way. Some dogs need a very particular type of client. You know, they may have some quirk that we've got to find the right fit for. So our priority is finding the right match first, and trying to keep things moving as quickly as we can for the dogs and for the whole process. But finding that right match is very important. There's also times where dog moves through final training quickly, ready to go, match for the client, and then something unforeseen comes up with a client, to know whether it's their health or family situation or things like that. So we've had a few of those just recently where just the timing all of a sudden didn't work. So then it's kind of either back to the drawing board or wait a little while till that client's ready. So there's so many variables with it. It's really tough to give a specific answer that fits for every situation.
All right, thank you. Jeff, can you go backwards a little bit maybe and talk about what initiated this plan to expand?
Sure. And that, I think that kind of goes to some of what I said right at the beginning. It all started with the strategic plan, and one of our 3 goals was to serve more people. But we didn't want to start that right away because we're not ready to start that right now. There's still things that need to happen before growth is going to actually occur. And so from that strategic plan, that's when we formed this group. We called it the 2030 work group because we were trying to set a goal for what size we'd be in 2030. We changed that to a 10-year plan as opposed to what would have been a 7-year plan. Bottom line, everybody involved understands and gets to see how transformative these dogs are for people, that they are literally transforming the lives of entire families. And we as staff get to hear those stories every day. A lot of people don't get the benefit of that. But it is no small deal what these dogs do. And when you hear those stories and you hear from the parent of a child with autism about how, somebody told me that this dog saved our family and rescued a little boy who was trapped inside our son who we didn't even know existed. Or somebody will come in and say, this dog literally saved my life last night. A diabetes patient. I would be dead if not for this dog. Or I never thought I could ever live alone. I thought I would always have people around me essentially having to babysit me. Now I can. I have dignity and freedom and independence that I never thought was possible for me. When we get to hear those stories, I think everybody says, if we can change a few more lives every year, if we can transform a few more families every year, and we can do it responsibly in a way that doesn't sacrifice who we are as an organization, that doesn't sacrifice our quality, then we want to do that. And then that was the not just the consensus, but the unanimous decision of everyone on the board and others who have been part of this. Let's grow, let's serve more people, but let's figure out how to do it in a realistic and responsible way. So that's kind of what led us to get to the spot of expanding the building. And in all honesty, even if we weren't going to grow and we're going to stay around 40 to 50 teams a year, we have outgrown this space. So if we want to continue our quality, the quality of work that we do and stay in the, say, the upper range of that 40 to 50, we're not going to be able to do it in this space. And certainly if we want to grow and serve more people and get better, we need more training space. We need more meeting space. We need a whelping center that's right here on site. And the volunteer center and the early learning center are just going to be game changers for us.
We have some great questions coming in. This next one, I'm going to stay with you, Jeff. Can you speak about the specific plans that might be discussed now about raising money and who might be asked for the donations for the capital campaign?
Sure. Everybody will be asked for donations for the capital campaign, just different levels, depending upon what, whether it's $20 or $2 million and everything in between. Right now, in this early phase, probably the first few months of the capital campaign, it will be people who we know have capacity to make a very large gift. So I don't know where we cut that off, but it's going to be in the several $100,000 range or more, and we'll be doing individual meetings with them. And I suspect maybe next summer we will open that up to a much larger group and eventually everybody in that public phase. We have a capital campaign committee of, I think, 14 different people that includes board members, it includes volunteers, it includes some donors, a couple staff members. And we will be, as a committee, we will be driving the effort. But I mean, if anyone is listening and is interested in helping in some way, whether it's through a contribution or helping us raise money, or even has an idea for somebody that we could talk to or an organization we could talk to, even though we're not in the public phase yet, we would very much welcome that advice or that help or that introduction. We already have our capital campaign account that a couple people have contributed to, so it has started.
Julianne, we're going to hop back to you. Someone was asking about the average time it takes to apply for a service dog. Can you tell us what that time frame is looking like these days?
Another question that is variable. So the application process, once an application is submitted, the next step is for us to check the references that were given, including a medical professional and personal references. So depending on how quickly some of those get back to us, that can make a big difference. I'll be honest, it seems like the doctor references are often the toughest ones to get in a timely manner. So I do encourage anybody that applies, feel free to check in. If you haven't heard anything in a little bit, or you're wondering where things are, or if there's anything you can do to help kind of push things along, please do check in with our client services staff, and they can update you on where your application is in the process.
How about the number of dogs ready now and waiting for a person and the people currently waiting? You have more details of?
We've had, I think, the most client applications come in this year ever. It's been a really big year for applications. So we have quite a few people that are either in the process or approved and waiting. We also still working through our backlog of dogs from, between COVID and then being short-staffed here and there. So we have quite a few dogs in the process as well. So at this time, we are overflowing with applications and have a lot of dogs that are being prepared for placements with those people.
Okay, we'll give your voice a little break again and go back to Jeff of how will daily classes and other activities and events be impacted during construction?
Yeah, honest answer is I don't know. It's really going to depend once we, and this is months from now, but once we have chosen a contractor, then we will have to sit down and kind of put the plan together with staff. How can we make this work? It'll be complicated. It'll be a challenge for, again, a few months probably in 2026, likely. But we will do everything we can to accommodate people. Maybe we'll find a different place to do classes or different places to do classes, maybe do more online. Hopefully, we'll still be able to use the big room throughout much of the construction, but we certainly won't be able to 100% of the time.
All right, we'll bounce back to Julianne again. Can you please briefly touch on the additional prisons to be added and how that dovetails with the overall strategic plan? What will be needed to add these prisons?
Well, we're very excited that we're already in the process of adding one new prison for sure. They're preparing to have dogs probably going to start late January, early February, and that's another Wisconsin prison. And then there is another Wisconsin prison that I have visited and had conversations with staff that looks like they are also going to start next spring at some point. We have hired a new Wisconsin prison program coordinator who lives more in central Wisconsin, so she will be working in those two new prisons along with our current prison, Jackson. And I think having the prison programs as part of our puppy raising strategy is an amazing thing. It does help us with more spots for dogs, so a little less reliant on volunteers for longer term things like that for full puppy raising. And I just think it's a valuable asset to Can Do Canines as well as to the different prisons. So it's a win-win-win situation with our prison programs.
Hey, Julianne, could you explain how we're going to be doing Minnesota prisons staffing a little differently going forward as well?
Yeah, we've kind of shifted a little bit with how, I mean, in the past we had one person working with four different prisons in Minnesota. We decided to kind of break it apart. So we added some of those extra puppy program staff to help cover prisons. So puppy program staff, and right now one of our new client services coordinators are kind of splitting up the prisons. So they'll each have a prison that they go to. One of ours is going to have two prisons, but so kind of splitting it up and bringing it all into the fold of puppy program, which I think will really help with consistency, eyes on the dogs among the staff that work directly out of our facility here in New Hope.
Okay. Jeff, I have one for you here. Can you speak to the cost/benefit of the new puppy daycare space? Do we know what percentage roughly of volunteers might use that versus using that space perhaps for a different need?
Yeah, and we're going to build it in a flexible way so that if we decide after trying this for a year or two that there is a better use for it, we could use it differently, or we could use part of it differently. But before we made this decision, I think we sent out 2 different polls to all of our active volunteers, asking them the first time we're having trouble in particular finding volunteers for that 10 to 20 week age group, what we used to call Great Start Puppies. And what ideas do you have? What can we do? And we got lots of great ideas. Some of them we were able to implement right away. Others of them we weren't, but are still considering. But one thing that came up multiple times was if I had some flexibility to actually go to work and not leave that puppy at home for 8 or 10 hours a day, which I would never do, then I would absolutely consider doing that. And so we sent out a second survey to everybody specifically with that issue. If we did this and offered you this flexibility, would you be able to help us with Great Start puppies or those 10-week-old puppies, even though you can't right now? And I don't remember the numbers, but we were quite surprised at the number of volunteers who said, yes, that would make all the difference in the world. So the benefit would be tremendous, especially if we want to grow. We can't probably grow in any meaningful way unless we solve this particular volunteer problem. And while this doesn't solve the problem, I think it will help tremendously. Having said that, we have made a determination, though, that we want to build this in a way where it is flexible. And if at some point we decide, this was great, but maybe a better use is for older dogs who, we can't find a shorter term home for, and they could come be with us for a week or 2 weeks or whatever it is, or we're waiting on a dog. So rather being in the regular kennel, they could have a different spot to have. There are a lot of different options. But right now we believe that the best use for that space would be to be as an early learning center.
Okay. On that subject, just what might be a quick question for Julianne. What hours will the puppy daycare facility be open?
Good question. That's something too that we'll have to figure out kind of as we get more into that moment. Right now we have kennel staff that get here 6:30, 6:45 in the morning. So I would assume, we work with those similar hours, maybe could drop off as early as 7 and pick up as late as 5, maybe 6. So that's something we'll have to kind of figure out with how staffing looks, how we're going to use volunteers, and all of that. So a lot of it's still a work in progress and can't speak to exact details at this point.
I'm going to stay with you and ask if you can speak to what happens if a graduate moves out of state and then might eventually need a successor dog, and maybe explain what that is to people who might not know. And are we able to do that when they now live in a state other than Minnesota or Wisconsin?
So the successor is someone who has had a dog from us before. And we have some successors that have had 2 or 3 dogs at this point. Unfortunately, we aren't able to place dogs with even successors that are outside of our neighboring states. We have considered into South Dakota because we used to serve and place dogs in South Dakota, so we'll consider that. Wisconsin, Iowa, we could consider in North Dakota. Unfortunately, if clients have moved further away than that, we just don't have the ability to provide the support that we want to give to our teams. Certainly don't have staff to go train in a different state. So we had made that decision a while ago that we need to kind of stick to our vicinity so we can provide the support that we want.
Okay, I have another one here for you, Julianne. With the addition of facility dogs and other programs, are we seeing less dogs that are being career changed?
Another variable, kind of depends on what dogs are being career changed for, but that is one of the goals of the facility program and skilled home companions, is looking when we can for a dog who might have been career changed that we could still put into a job. Most of our dogs really want a job. That's what they were bred to do, raised to do. And if we can find them a working position, we want to do that. So certainly is helpful to have those options for the dogs that those are fit for.
I'm going to stay on that topic with you because someone else asked what the top reasons are currently for a dog to be career changed.
Oh, off the top of my head, I would have to say our constant battle with allergies is one. On the medical side, it's probably allergies. Behavioral side, it's probably reactivity, and typically reactivity towards dogs. So those are the 2 main things lately.
Okay. Jeff, we're going to bounce to you here. Will there be someone living on site once the new building is complete?
No, the plan, and actually before we even talked about this, we had determined that eventually we probably won't have somebody living on site. We've had in theory, an on-site caretaker since we moved into this building, with one exception, which was the last person who was here for a long period of time. It just hasn't worked at all. People generally don't want to live in an industrial park, even though it's a nice little apartment. And we think that we would be better served by having a part-time facilities person. We talked extensively with staff about this, though, because obviously having somebody on site is a plus. But we have found out that having someone here, including talking to the man who was in this position for almost 2 years for us and was amazing, he said he could count on one hand the number of times that it was necessary that he be here on site. With the early learning center and the kennel, we have people here much of the day. And certainly when the whelping center is here, we will have people here, at least in the early phases of having new puppies overnight anyway.
I'm seeing that we're in our final 10 minutes and we still have quite a few questions here to go. So we will try to get through as many as we can here. But Jeff, with the current backlog that's been noted of applicants and approved clients, how will we work to prevent future burnout of new staff members as placements begin to happen?
Yeah, it's just something we will have to be very cognizant of. I think we're in a spot right now, once we are fully staffed, there's still a couple of positions where I believe we have offers out and we're waiting to hear back. And then we have a person coming right at the beginning of the year. We feel like we're in a good place. I think staff feels like they'd be in a good place. But we still have that plan in place to grow as we grow in numbers for staff, knowing that we're going to have to raise more money and spend more money, and just be very cognizant of it. I would also say that for the first time ever, we have an HR person, a professional HR person here. She's part-time, but it has been a wonderful investment for all of us, I think. And I think she can help in that area an awful lot.
Julianne, as we look at these future plans, will there still be a pet program?
I assume the question is about our owner-provided teams. So those are teams that the client applies that has a dog of their own already, that meets our qualifications. And we, at this time, have no intention of stopping that program. So it's something we evaluate occasionally, but in fact, I just had a conversation about it recently with our client services team, and everybody feels comfortable continuing to offer owner-provided services.
Okay. We'll keep going with you. What is your goal from a time standpoint, placing a client with a trained dog from start to finish with staffing increases and building expansion happening?
I don't think, as far as the team training goes, I'm assuming that's what the question is. I don't expect our goals for team training time to change based on any of those things. So right now, our goal is always approximately 8 weeks from start to finish with a new team. Obviously, if a client needs more time, we will give them more time, but that's just kind of the goal that we shoot for with each new team.
All right, Jeff, I'm going to pass this one to you here. It sounds like the expansion will help puppies and dogs in training. Do you see any benefit toward clients who graduated years ago?
I'm trying to think, and Julianne, jump in if you can think. When I think specifically of the building expansion, I mean, probably more than anything else, it will accommodate us having a larger staff, which on the client services and graduate services team, I mean, there will be a day comes where we'll need more than one graduate services coordinator, and we certainly wouldn't have the space for that. So this allows us, this will allow us to grow from a staff standpoint in the client services department, which we couldn't do right now. But other than that, with respect to the expansion, I'm not sure it'll have a great effect on existing clients.
I do think the additional training space will be helpful, so gives us a little more opportunity to offer continuing education opportunities for our graduate teams. We have been doing some of that, but it is limited based on the space. So if we have teams in training or puppy classes going on or things like that, that limits the availability of training rooms to offer more. So I think having that extra training space will make a difference for our graduates as well.
Julianne, a college student is asking a series of questions, so I will throw these at you. They say, when a person training with a service dog, how much time on average does it take weekly? And maybe how long does that whole process span? They're wondering if there's a way to be able to set up a schedule to fit around college classes in doing that.
Well, we currently do work with 2 different colleges with dog programs. So students in those programs absolutely work around their classes and take dogs to classes with them. So one thing to keep in mind with the training, especially when we're raising dogs and it's not just focused final training happens all the time, right? So even if you have a dog with you at class and the dog is just sleeping under your chair, that is still training. That dog is learning to be calm and be quiet in public environment. So training kind of happens throughout the day, even in our volunteer homes. You kind of work on things as you're going through your daily life.
Great. Someone asked, you talked about what's going on with some of the Wisconsin prisons and Minnesota prisons, but they want to know specifically about Stanley Correctional Institution in Wisconsin.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we still have dogs there.
Business as usual.
Yeah, we are going to be staffing Stanley with puppy program staff like we are with the Minnesota prisons. So we're just in the process of getting some of our new staff members cleared to start working in some of those different prisons. And Stanley is one of those that our puppy program staff will be handling.
Okay, and a question about rescue dogs, because we do mention that we try to use rescue dogs when we can. Are you able to speak to that frequency if we are going to try to continue with that?
Our staff, we always are keeping our eyes open for a dog that might be a good fit for us. In the past, we had kind of an agreement with Animal Humane Society, and they would donate dogs to us. That agreement had to be altered. They will still adopt dogs to us, but they won't donate dogs, which makes it a little bit tougher to take a dog into the program and see if it's going to be a good fit for us. We continue to work on building relationships with different rescues that can help us kind of vet potential dogs prior to us taking them into our training program. So it is something we keep an eye out for. The other piece of that is having enough volunteer homes willing to take in a dog that we don't know much about, if anything. So those are all kind of some of the pieces that go into it. And we haven't taken a rescue dog in a while now, but certainly keep our eyes open.
And I'm going to make this the last question. It's for Jeff, and I think it's going to be a good, easy one. But someone says, if we have a company that might be interested in supporting the expansion financial needs, who should we contact?
Call me tonight as soon as we're off. Seriously, reach out to me. If you know Sheila, who's our development director, you can reach out to her, but shoot me an email, give me a call. Obviously, we would love that introduction and we'd love to talk to them.
Okay, on that note, and at 8 o'clock, we are going to wind things up here. I want to again thank Chikia for being with us. and all of you for tuning in. It's been a pleasure to share this information with you.
Thank you all.